On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, we talk about the injury report, any cause for concern heading into Saturday's matchup, and how can the offensive line leave their mark to help win the game.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, welcome to today's episode. I'm Credential Media member and Texans football analyst John Hickman alongside Credential Media member, man with the big hat, big smile. What we calling you? Playoff B. Brian Big Sarge Bearfield, thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're looking at Houston versus everyone. The outside noise. CJ called it noise is noise. The national media has all their opinions about the Houston Texans. Are they right? Are they wrong? It doesn't matter. Inside that locker room, how can the offensive line leave their mark? Houston, CJ, the running game, they're going to need the big guys up front to have a hell of a performance. But we open up today's show looking at the injury report. Any cause for concern? You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Big Sarge,
what's going on?
Tuesday, the injury report dropped. John Mechie did not practice. No Danico Autry and no Shaq Mason. Houston got Jeff Okudah back, but he was limited. So was Christian Harris. Will Anderson was a full go Tuesday. Sarge, any cause for concern heading into Saturday's matchup?
One of the concerns may be John Mitchell. We don't know how affected he was, even though they called it a concussion, I think, on Sunday after he took that big hit in the game against the Tennessee Titans. And so we don't know if it's actually a concussion. We don't know if he re-aggravated the shoulder, because I think it was his shoulder that kept him out of a game 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Was it the Baltimore game? I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. He actually missed the game because of the shoulder. And so him being out, that may be a cause for concern. Great addition by going and picking up Deontay Johnson so they can have, someone to fill in that spot. Deontay Johnson may even start, but you look at that wide receiver room and you have Nico, of course, you have Deontay Johnson, you got veteran Robert Woods, you have Xavier Hutchinson, you have Jared Wayne. And so you have some pieces there that you can, put in there just in case if John Mechie isn't able to contribute to the offense. But outside of that, he's probably the only one that I can see that probably would be, missing a big part. If not, Danico Autry, I think that he's going to go through the motions of just getting through practicing, and I don't think there's any way he's going to miss this game. Shaq Mason, you hate to see him out, but I'm going to be honest with you, John, and we talked about this a little bit before. I kind of like the job that Juice did when he subbed in for Shaq, and we'll talk about the offensive line a little bit later on. But not having Shaq's veteran leadership and presence out there on the field, that could hurt. But other than that, John, I don't see anybody on that list that would give me cause and concern for Saturday's matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I would just say, to John Mechie's point, I think that would be the cause for concern, simply based off of, looking at totality of this entire season. Jared Wayne is not and I like Jared Wayne coming out of Pitt, but he's not a reliable weapon for the Houston Texans. Xavier Hutchinson is not a reliable weapon for the Houston Texans. And so now that does put a lot, if he's not able to go, and we're hoping that he does, but that does put a lot on the shoulders of newly acquired wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who Houston did a very good job against Tennessee, finding ways to get him involved. Return game, had a couple of targets as well. So there won't be too much of a drop-off maybe between the player, but that also leaves guys that just hasn't been able to contribute to this offense a lot or at all this year. So I think that if John Mechie isn't a go Saturday, that would be a cause for concern. You want your quarterback to play in rhythm, of course. You want him to be out there with guys that he absolutely trusts. And for CJ, a quarterback that will throw in some tight windows, right? According to a lot of the advanced stats, CJ has a lot of tight window throws this year. The problem is, even with some of those attempts, some of those throws are not coming down. So with his tendencies that he's been able to build up this year, you want guys out there that at the very least has caught a couple of targets for CJ, guys that have been able to be somewhat of contributing factors. And if I look at Jerry Wayne, if I even look at Xavier Hutchinson, for the most part, that's not the case. Robert Woods will be able to play, so that's a positive. Deontay Johnson, one of those receivers, you called him an X factor weapon for the Houston Texans. He's a type of receiver, if he's on the field and getting targets, right? That's been a problem for his last couple of stops. He can be a positive, impactful player, but no John Mechie, regardless of how anybody feels, that can throw off rhythm for a quarterback that absolutely needs to be on his A game.
I think that this is going to be a game, especially when you get into the playoffs. Time of possession is very, very important. It's a key element to winning playoff games. I mean, there's no more of the, greatest show on turf when the St. Louis Rams was playing with Kurt Warner and that group that he had. Now, time of possession is what will win you a playoff game, and especially when you're in these single game eliminations. It's one of the things that's valuable. That time of possession is valuable. And so I understand with not having John Mechie, but I think that who could come up really big in his absence, and I don't know how many snaps John Mechie was going to get, or how many he's going to, if he plays, how many he's going to get. But this is where you can see a player like Robert Woods step up and keep the chains moving. If the Houston Texans can stay out of third and longs, and I'm talking about 3rd and 8+ yards, but if they can get into second and 7, and then 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3. Robert Woods is the kind of receiver that can catch the ball, get you 3 to 5 yards, 5 to 7 yards, keep the chains moving, and then you get a new fresh set of downs, which brings new offensive plays. And so you're going to need that type of possession wide receiver. And I think that if John Mechie isn't able to go, Robert Woods will be that. But you can also see if Mechie is able to go, I would like for them to put him in certain situations where he can also keep the chains moving as well.
Yeah. I think when we're looking at cause for concern, I would say a cause for rejoicing maybe is getting Foley Fatukasi back. I don't know how many times, whether that's been via text or just on this show, have you talked about him. And he's been a very important piece for this Houston Texans defense in terms of being able to stop the run. Now, the Chargers are not a good running team. Joe Mixon, I think, is 31st in the league in rush success rate. J.K. Dobbins is right on him at 30. But you do get a player in Foley back who can provide that extra support against stopping the run, who's already, for the Chargers, again, struggling. He has an average depth of tackle of 1.6 yards, and he has recorded 13 run stops. And one thing that Foley does that goes completely under the radar, he just makes the linebacker's job a whole lot easier. So commands that hole, commands the gap, plays well, plays sound gap discipline defense. Getting him back, though he was limited at practice, I think is a big thing for the Houston Texans. They're going to need all they can get Saturday. And we're going to talk about everybody kind of picking the Chargers. I've seen one national media member pick the Texans. So we'll talk about that to close off the show. However, the offensive line will absolutely be needed. You had an opportunity to ask DeMeco Ryans about now left guard Titus Howard. And so let's get into what he's been able to do, but just overall what those guys up front will need to do Saturday to help this offense. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are here, and they're better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. So the Houston Texans take on the LA Chargers at home. And they got a same game parlay that you may like. Got the 4-leg same game parlay. Joe Mixon anytime touchdown. Lad McConkey anytime touchdown. J.K. Dobbins anytime touchdown, and Nico Collins anytime touchdown. $10 get you $221. $10 get you $221. So go ahead and check out the odds right now over at FanDuel.com. And again, new customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Join FanDuel today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Welcome back, Battle Red Nation, to the Locked On Texans podcast. John, I know that I've said this on numerous occasions, over and over and over and over and over again. If there's anybody I like speaking with, talking to during training camp when it comes to the offensive and defensive line, it's you. You're one of the ones who can point out things that I may not be well versed on. And one of the things that you were looking at throughout this this past training camp was the offensive line play. And even though they didn't have Titus out there for a lot of times, they did not have Laramie Tunsil out there, both of their bookend tackles. And, you didn't get a chance to see that offensive line in rhythm play all together until towards the end of training camp and maybe one preseason. Now, I don't think they even played a preseason game together, but you got a chance to see them.
Titus did, Laramie didn't.
Yeah, in training camp, you finally seen what you thought would be the finished product, and then you have inefficient play by some players. You have injuries that's caused the offensive line to be shifted around, and now you're looking at right tackle Titus Howard, who is his versatility goes unnoticed a lot when it comes to him and to come to the things that he can do, because he can play every position except the center position. I think he has played pretty much every position except center, but the ability to be able to move him up and down the line, and that's happened, his entire career since he's been in Houston. But now you're looking at a line, and I don't want to call it a makeshift line, but it really is a makeshift line with left tackle Laramie Tunsil, left guard Titus Howard, center Jared Patterson, right guard who's taking the place of Shaq Mason, especially if he can't go this week, in Juice Scruggs, and then you got the rookie right tackle in Blake Fisher. John, how can this offensive line leave their mark on this game against the Los Angeles Chargers? But before you give me your answer, let's hear what head coach D'Amico Ryans had to say.
Yeah, Titus has done a really good job stepping in at the left guard spot, and he's handled himself very well. I mean, playing tackle to move in the guard, and it's been a very seamless transition, unselfish by him. That's the type of mindset we want from all our players. It's just a team-first mindset of whatever it takes for our team to be successful, to put us in position to win. Like, everybody needs to be willing to do that. Titus was willing to make the move, and I think, we've been better up front with Titus in at the guard position. And, as much credit to Titus and to all the guys, how they continue to work well together. I mean, Patterson stepping in at center, I think he's grown. He's continued to get better with the communication. It's operating at the center position. Then we had Juice step in at right guard last week. So you see guys moving around to different spots, but it's about just getting our best guys out there and going and competing. That's what O-line, offensive line play is about. It's gritty, it's tough. You don't get a lot of love, a lot of pats on the back, but everybody's going to criticize you when it goes wrong, but you just have to make sure you just stay the course and just keep grinding, playing tough, gritty football.
That's a good question there by you. Since Titus Howard has moved over to left guard the last 4 games to close out the year, only 1 sack allowed, 4 pressures, only 3 hurries. And you kind of look at, man, what if Houston would have did that a little bit earlier in the year? Yeah. Would the season look a little bit different? So kudos to Titus Howard, one of those guys that I was told didn't want to necessarily make the move, but he's always been a team player, and he'll continue to do what the Texans need him to do. Now, how can this offensive line leave their mark, Sarge? We know that they need them. We know that those guys up front impact the game so much simply because you got who we believe can be an elite quarterback, didn't have an elite year, but you got CJ Stroud who needs that time. right? And it's been up and down all year. You got a running back in Joe Mixon, as I told you guys earlier, doesn't have the best rushing success rate. Out of 175 attempts, he's at the bottom of the league. So when I look at how this offensive line can be impactful, I'm looking at, well, who are they going up against? They're going up against the Chargers, and D'Amico Ryans talked about the depth of the Chargers rushers, saying that the pressures from the Chargers are varied and they swap and adjust their rushers all game, including safety Derwin James, who we all love, to create unique pressures. To give some insight on what those numbers look like to back it up, Joey Bosa, 5 sacks. Khalil Mack, 6 sacks. Bud Dupree, 6 sacks. Tui Peloto, 8.5 sacks. And then Derwin James, 5.5 sacks. The tough ask of this team from the offense, for the offensive line, is making sure they can give CJ the time that he needs in the pocket consistently, because the numbers kind of back it up. When comparing CJ to himself, when given time in the pocket, we see that CJ has a higher average depth of target, looking at 12.3 compared to 4.4 when he has 2.5 seconds or less in the pocket to throw the ball. So you want to give him almost 2.5, 3 seconds, a little bit more. Hold up, let him hold up in that pocket. CJ does a little bit better in avoiding pressure when he has a little bit more time, as every other quarterback in the NFL for the most part. But that also allows for him to negate those negative plays and some of those sacks that we've been accustomed to seeing from this offense this year. And so I think that's what you want to see from your offensive line, plain and simple. You got the best unit out there. They play fairly well against the Tennessee Titans, and those guys played up into the second half and I think a little bit into the third quarter Sunday. Give CJ the time that he needs to be able to deliver some of those throws. And I'm under the thought that he has gained some trust back from his guys, which is why I wanted to see him in the first team offense to finish out the season. I think CJ needed to get himself back, make some of those throws, and he had the perfect drive, 6 for 6 and a touchdown to end it off. But the offensive line played extremely well against Tennessee, and we saw that team go down there and score a point in the red zone. And they're going to be going up against a very tough defense.
Yeah, sure. And John, I think that they in everything that you said, I loved, and I, will I'll tip my hat to. But I'm going to go and look at it from another route, John. I mean, in the last segment, we talked about time of possession. And I think that the Texans offensive line can leave their mark if they allow Joe Mixon to have some running lanes. And if you're able to run the football, Joe Mixon is one of those running backs. He doesn't have to have a big hole to run through. He can make a hole if you give him the time. If you don't have defenders in the backfield at his feet as soon as the ball is snapped. And so I think that what you've seen now is where Laramie is lacking a little bit on the left side as far as run blocking is concerned. Titus makes up for that. We know that Laramie is the best pass blocker on that line, and now you're putting those two over there. And don't get me wrong, because Kenyon Green is a very good run blocker as well. He's just young. I don't want to say that he's still learning the game. I just think that he may need a little bit more time to get acclimated. And I like that the fact that they're allowing him to be on the sidelines and look and see kind of how it's supposed to happen. And so when you have, Titus and you have Laramie on the same side, plus those guys are best friends on the field and off the field, and they work in unison. It almost like they know exactly what each other is going to do because they talk to each other so much. And so if you can get that side of the line going as far as creating some type of gaps and holes for Joe Mixon, I think that that's going to be very, very good. You remember on the 92-yard run by Dameon Pierce, it was Titus Howard's seal-off block that allowed that hole to come open, and for Dameon Pierce to be able to get through there and then take it to the house, of course. But John, I asked about Titus Howard, and I like the move that they made to putting him to left guard. I think that has solidified. At least it stopped the drain. It stopped the drain just a little bit. But I will say this: I'm looking at Ricky Blake Fisher. I like the way that he stepped up and he's played in the last couple of weeks. Juice played his first game at right guard. I'm still curious to see what they're going to do with him. But out of that whole offensive line, John, I think that Jared Patterson is the one that's going to leave his mark. Because if you looked at what it's almost like, maybe it was because him and CJ played together so much last season that they have that type of chemistry and that type of rhythm. And it looks like he is starting to see what's going on a little bit better. He's able to see some things that he may not have been able to recognize in what the defense was doing early on in the season when he was playing, not early on in the season, but when he first started playing there. And I think that that's his natural position. I don't think that you should move him anywhere else. And I'm just talking about in the future. I know you're going to go out and you're going to get draft another offensive lineman, but I think that if you going to put Juice in that right guard spot, keep him there, but you cannot move Jared Patterson. I think that's the strongest center that they have on this team.
I also want to add to, the fact that, you get a better CJ when you get 2.5 seconds or more.
Yeah.
The most noticeable stat, 114 first downs.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and we know that, those first downs are key to sustaining drives, which typically lead to getting points. Now, for the Houston Texans, they get down there, but they may not always come away with 7. But at the very least,
that red zone, John. Good Lord,
they got to be better in the red zone. And this is what's scary. Let's talk. This is what's scary.
The Chargers got a good red zone defense.
The Chargers have a very good red zone defense, and overall, you're looking at Jesse Minters in his first year full-time defensive coordinator for the Chargers.
Yeah,
first in points allowed. Opponent first half points. Second half points, you're looking at 7.9.
Wait, they're only giving up 7.9 points in the second half?
In the second half.
I hope Miami get 3 field goals.
And how many times have we came on this show and said, hey, man, this offense would have just gave us 6 more.
Yeah.
Because Kaimi's going to give you 3, right? So they're first in second half points with 7.9. That's wait a minute. Let me first half points 7.9, second half points 9.8. Total yards allowed 11th in the NFL. Rushing yards per attempt allowed 4.7, so that's 27th. But EPA per play 5th in the NFL. Red zone defense 1st in the NFL. Third down defense 5th in the NFL. So controlling the clock, running the ball, we're going to need to see that.
Can I ask a question real quick, John?
Absolutely.
Just real quickly. Because last year it was, we'd be talking about this with the Texans, but only for them to come back and be able to prove that, that they have one heck of a defense, right? They have a really good defense. Hey, John, how many of those stats how many of those numbers that you just read are compiled based off the fact that they have beaten 8 teams under 500?
I think those stats can be inflated. In that division, they played rookie Bo Nix twice. I don't know how many quarterbacks suited up for the Raiders this year. Of course, you play Patrick Mahomes, and that's Patrick Mahomes. As a matter of fact, they didn't play the best of quarterbacks. Drake May played a couple of rookies. So I look at it, the defense itself, very good defense.
Yes. I'm just
quarterbacks that they went against. You could say, okay, lackluster, mediocre, or guys that's just learning the NFL when you look at the rookies. I get all of that, which is why I'm going to put emphasis back on the offensive line, giving CJ enough time to be able to go out there and be elite.
Yeah.
I think the fact is, Sarge, CJ got to be elite. We've looked for the CJ game all year. Why not in the playoffs? And why not do that in the playoffs when everybody in the National Football League, even maybe locally, are doubting the Houston Texans? So let's close off with that conversation. Houston versus everyone. H-Town, put your H's up. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, You want to make the most of the final weeks of football action, whether it's college or NFL. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions and hot takes, good or bad, into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like passing totals, passing total yards, rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play boost or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in winnings, it's clear that people love this platform. Here's a special offer for our Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Download the app today if you already haven't, and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com, or download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game. And also, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of segue into saving money. Did you know with Rocket Money, they help you find any subscription you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? This happened to a lot of us. This happened to me with CapCut. I went in and used Rocket Money, and I realized, hey, I'm paying a little bit more than I should. Oh, that's because I got 2 subscriptions. Went ahead and got that taken care of because Rocket Money made it easy to track it all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. So with Rocket Money, they are a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bill so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, CJ Stroud said noise is just noise. You actually asked Joe Mixon something in the locker room. What did Joe Mixon say?
Joe Mixon's like, man, I'm just putting my helmet. Hold on, you know what, John? I want to give you the exact quote because I don't want to just give me 1 second. I don't want to get it wrong.
While you look at that, I want to say this. We talked, was it last week, going into last week, with the favorable matchups for the Houston Texans. I call the Houston Texans a one-and-done playoff team. If the Houston Texans prove me wrong, I'll come back on this show Monday and be happy that they proved me wrong. But as I take a further look into this LA Chargers team, it takes everything out of me not to say San Diego, but I'm just a football fan. But as I look at this team, to your point, they beat some mediocre quarterbacks.
Yeah.
They beat some rookies. The defense is stout. I think number 1 in the league right now, all together. They create turnovers. They do collectively a good job of getting after the quarterback. However, in Houston, what have we seen from this defense? 5 interceptions from, at one point, an MVP type of quarterback in Jared Goff. We saw Houston with 8 sacks in one game. We've seen this defense time and time again against some better quarterbacks. I mean, nobody talks about Houston with the job they did against Josh Allen. And where is he right now? In what talks?
Yeah, MVP.
So like around the National League, the storyline has been, man, I don't think people realize how good the Chargers defense is and what they've done this year. Okay, that's fair. But we realize how good this Houston Texans defense is. We've seen it against some of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is probably the only quarterback that had his way with St. Patrick Mahomes, but that was a good game until everything happened. Defensively, they give Houston a shot, and that's why we need to see CJ be elite. But Joe Mixon said what?
Joe Mixon said, "I'm just here to let my helmet and shoulder pads do the talking." He didn't even know Rex Ryan, former NFL head coach and current ESPN NFL commentator, had even said he didn't even know anything about the remarks. And so Joe said, "I'm just here to let my helmet and shoulder pads do the talking." John, you know, there's a line on the song called "Welcome to Houston" where he says, "Welcome to the home of Screw, H-Town versus everybody," right? John, let me go ahead and put this to the side right quick. Hey, let me tell y'all something, man. I want you to listen and listen good. For all of you all who are doubting the Houston Texans, right? For all of you all out there doubting the Houston Texans, come closer to whatever apparatus you're listening to me on, whatever apparatus you're watching us on. Turn the volume up because I'm about to get louder. John, let me tell you something. All this disrespect about the Houston Texans. Now, John, it's well known that I'm not in my personal life. I'm not a Houston Texan fan. You're not a Houston Texan fan, but I'll be damned if I'm gonna sit back and let somebody just talk down on Houston, right? I'm be damned if I'm gonna let somebody call the Houston Texans soft. Hey, you're not gonna. They got Houston in that name, so if you call the Houston Texans soft, it's almost like you're calling me soft. Rex Ryan, let me tell you this: how many games have you watched of the Houston Texans this season? All you're going by is whatever you read on social media and whatever you may see in the stat box or whatever everybody else is saying. To say that the Houston Texans are soft and that the Chargers have a bye week against the Houston Texans sounds ridiculous to me, because we're talking about a team who, when they're scheduled, John, what did they have? One of like top 5, top 7 toughest schedules this year?
Yes, which actually, put it into perspective, 10-7 against one of the tougher schedules in the NFL.
So for you to say that this team is soft, there is no team that will be led by DeMeco Ryans that will ever be able to have the moniker or the label of being soft. Now, I get it. We're in a social media age where they're looking for clicks, they're looking for likes, they're looking for retweets, they're looking for all that other stuff because that's what gets the needle moving. I got that part. But for you to say that the I almost call them San Diego, for you to say the Los Angeles Chargers are going to come in and it's like a bye week against the Houston Texans, if we're being honest, John, the 2024 Los Angeles Chargers is nothing but the 2023 Houston Texans. That's it. They're pretty much the exact same team. You're going to say that when you look on a team that's led by Daniil Hunter, Azeez Al-Shaair, Will Anderson, Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley. And I'm just talking about on the defense side of the ball, because when you start talking about soft, we got to talk about the defense side of the ball first, going up against Justin Herbert, who they want to make the next Peyton Manning, but he will never be the next Peyton Manning. That's right. Big Sar said it at me. Big Sar Sports with a Z at the end on Twitter. He'll never be that. John, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time we seen Justin Herbert in the playoffs, he was giving up a 27-3 lead, or 27-3, 27-7. They gave up that lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they lost. Yes, this is a different team led by, it's Jim Harbaugh, right?
Yes.
Led by Jim Harbaugh. And some people are saying, well, he had CJ number when he was in college. This ain't college no more. So those comments, John, are asinine and ridiculous to me.
I just want to add to the context. Yes, the Chargers defense ranks 7th in EPA, 6th in success rate against the pass. Now, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. Week 2, Bryce Young. Justin Fields. Rookie Bo Nix, rookie Spencer Rattler. I'm going to give you the ball, Jameis Winston. Division mate, Will Levis, Drake May, and Kirk Cousins. So that's the perspective I think we all need to look at. This is why I'm going to hold CJ to the standard of being the elite quarterback we saw last year. At times this year, Houston needs him to be elite. He cannot go out there and play like a Kirk Cousins, a Jameis Winston. And I'm specifically giving those two because those two have had turnover problems this year. So have CJ Stroud. Uncharacteristic turnover problems, which have eventually become a part of his characteristics. Playoffs, 0-0. He's fasting this year, getting closer to God. He's washed all those transgressions away.
And all my
He
sins.
needs to be elite because
Oh,
this
yeah.
defense has been able to feast on lesser quarterbacks. And I also feel like if he doesn't have a good game, we're going to start to look at him like a lesser quarterback, but I don't think that's going to happen. This is going to be a quarterback versus quarterback battle to determine the game. The defenses for both teams are going to do their job. The defenses for both teams, they're going to rep LA. The defense here in Houston with Aziz back, Christian Harris back at the same time, Foley back, Stingley on one side, Kamari on one side, hopefully Miles Brown in the middle of playing some nickel. Who should be a rookie, defensive rookie of the year candidate, Kalen Bullock. The defense is going to do their job. They're going to create turnovers. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to give Houston good field position. This offensive line needs to be able to block for CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon, give them the running lanes that they need to sustain drives. But CJ Stroud has to be a good quarterback. And I think if he does that, then the tune of me saying, hey, this is a one-and-done team could potentially change, and Houston could leave out this game with a dub.
And Rex Ryan, the only thing that's soft in Houston is the feet that you like to, you got a foot fetish.
Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
Make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out the crossover show tomorrow. Peace.